In this video, we're going to talk about setting up payment methods within WooCommerce so we can actually have our users go through checkout and send us money either online or through other methods. So in order to do this, we're going to hover over WooCommerce and we're going to click on Settings. And then on the next page, we're going to click on the Checkout tab. Now, all of the available payment methods in your system are going to be listed here at the top. And if you add additional extensions, like say a Stripe payment gateway, you're going to see that show up here at the top as well. So each payment gateway or payment method that you have available on your site also has its own individual settings. But first, let's go over the general payment settings that are available under the Checkout tab. The first set of settings have to do with coupons and whether or not you're going to have this functionality enabled on your site. So if you're going to be running coupons or promotions, in this first section, we want to enable the use of coupons. The second option here is whether or not coupons should be allowed to be calculated sequentially if you're allowing multiple coupons to be used, and you can see some information there below. Then we have some options for checkout process. So the first option here is enable guest checkout. This is really going to depend on what kind of relationship you're going to have with your customers. So guest checkout has some benefits and it has some cons. The benefit of a guest checkout, which basically means that the user does not have to create an account on your website, and that speeds up that checkout process a little bit, and that can prevent people kind of leaving midway. People get frustrated during checkout processes and they just kind of give up. Now that's a very small amount of the population, but it is something to consider whether or not we really need our users to create an account on our website. The cons of this, and there's cons both for your users and for your store. The cons for your user, if they don't register an account on your website and they used guest checkout, they're not going to have things like their order history and their account information in your site. So if they want to review that information or if they want to order from you again, they're going to have to go through that whole process again, and they're not going to have that information available. So it's really not beneficial to a customer to not create an account on your website so you can make their lives easier and also have that information available. And for you, the cons of having guest checkout are fairly obvious, where you may get a couple extra sales from people who would have avoided it if you didn't have it. Not having a guest checkout, it ends the communication after that order has been received and processed. So you're not able to grab their email address or send them messages about different discounts or promotions. You may be able to grab their email address, but it's a little bit different than having them have an account on your site. And again, you're not going to be able to offer them that order history and all these other kind of things that go along with having an account. So there's a lot of benefits for a user creating an account during that checkout process. But if you want to streamline everything as much as possible, then you may want to enable guest checkout. So my recommendation is to disable guest checkout so that users do have to create an account on your website, but that's going to be up to your own preferences. The next item, force secure checkout, that's something we are absolutely going to use, but we're not going to enable it quite yet. During the launch process, after we've installed our SSL certificate or our extra security measures, then we're going to force secure checkout, which is going to make sure that everybody goes through that secure pathway when they're using your store. But because we're on a staging site and none of that's set up yet, we're going to leave this option disabled for now, and I'll remind you to enable it again during our launch process. The next couple of options have to do with which pages are going to be used when our users look at their cart or look at their checkout. Now during setup, WooCommerce already created these pages for us, so unless you have a specific reason to change these, you should leave these as they are. The last item, however, terms and conditions, that is not a page that WooCommerce creates for us. So what we would want to do is go into our pages, create a new page, add our terms and conditions, add all of our text and content, and then save this page. And once you do that, it will be available in this drop down under terms and conditions. And I do recommend that you do that just to kind of protect yourself. And there's lots of terms and conditions you can find online, and you can use base yours off of those. So once you've created that page, come back here and select your terms and conditions page from this drop down. The checkout endpoints, again, has to do with our slugs and stuff like that that's used in our URL. You should leave these as they are unless you have a specific reason to change them or you're told to change them by somebody from WooTheme support. And finally, we have our payment gateways. So I'm going to go through these each one by one and show you the different settings. But down here, we have the gateway display order. These are also the order that these payment methods are going to be available to the user. So you should put the most important or your preferred payment method at the top and then put in the other options. Once we've saved our changes, we can go through our different payment gateways. So the first one I'm going to talk about is BACS, which is bank transfer. So this is an offline payment method, or at least off-site payment method. And if we want to allow bank transfer, we check this box. That's going to allow it to be an available option on our front end. We give it a title or a name so people understand what they're doing. We can put in a description, we can put in instructions, and then we put in our bank account details. This isn't a very popular way of payment in the States, but it is in certain parts of Europe. People like to do bank transfers, and so you can have that option. Just remember that if we do bank transfer or check payments or other kind of off-site orders, we're going to have a little bit more of administration work, because when that order is done or completed by the user, the status is going to be processing, and it's going to remain processing until you have manually gotten that payment and then gone into the order and completed it. And like we talked about, like with digital downloads or something like that, there's some options that have to do about whether or not they can have instant access or not. If you're shipping products, this is a little bit easier because you control the delivery of the actual product. So just keep that in mind, that if we're offering offsite options, we're going to have orders that are left at processing until you've told the system that those orders have been paid for. So now we'll go to check payments, and that's pretty similar. If we want to allow check payments, we can check this box. We put in a title, description, instructions, and then just save. And the same thing with cash on delivery. If you're doing like a delivery service and you're going to be getting paid as your employee delivers the products, we would enable this and then have a title, description, any special instructions, and then whether or not we want to enable this for specific shipping options. So if they've chosen, free delivery or local pickup, then would this apply, etc., that kind of a thing. And then do we want to allow this for virtual orders? And again, that's what I was talking about with the download. So if the cash on delivery, if the order is virtual or like a consultant hour or a digital download, something like that. And then we're going to get into what most people I think are going to be using, and that is PayPal. Now there's two different payment processing modules for PayPal. There's PayPal Express Checkout and PayPal Standard. Now for the majority of people, I actually recommend PayPal Express Checkout. This is a lot better for a lot of different reasons. I'm not going to go into it in this video, but I will link to some documentation talking about the differences. They're pretty similar in setup, but they operate slightly differently. But I do find that PayPal Express Checkout is much more reliable when it comes to processing orders and having like an easy checkout process for your users. The nice thing about PayPal, actually PayPal Standard and PayPal Express, is that the actual transaction or the taking of the payment processing is done on PayPal side, and so we're never actually storing any payment information from our customers on our site. So we don't have to worry about taking a lot of those extra security precautions that we would to protect that data, because everything is going to be happening on PayPal side, even though they may not necessarily be leaving our site to pay. And that's going to depend on your settings. So when we're talking about setting up PayPal Express Checkout, it's fairly, really easy to set this up. We're going to enable it here. We can add a title, something like Pay with PayPal, and they can pay either with a PayPal account or a credit card, and they don't necessarily need to have a PayPal account to pay this way. So really, we're just using PayPal as our payment processor. So we add in a title, we can add in a description. This live and sandbox, so if we want to test payments on our site, we can switch this to sandbox. If we want to allow live payments from our users, we would switch this to live. To connect to your PayPal account, click this button and follow the instructions, and that's going to automatically integrate with your PayPal account. And then we have some display settings, which allows you to kind of brand it a little bit towards your store. You can put some logo images and some header images, and that's going to brand those PayPal specific pages with your company information. We have some other options here at the bottom regarding PayPal Credit, which is something specific for US merchants, and we have the option for allowing checkout on a single product page. Under advanced settings, you're probably really not going to need to get into here too much, but if there is something in here that applies to your store specifically, read through these options and just check it out. But generally, it's as easy as filling out this part of the form, enabling the module, enter in a title and a description, choose whether or not it should be a sandbox or live environment for the moment while you're testing, and then set up your PayPal account by clicking on this button and following the instructions. And that's going to get you set up all through taking payments through PayPal, and that combined with your other options should give your users a nice selection of ways to pay. Now, if you're planning on using Stripe, it's similar to setup, it's similar to PayPal, but we need to download the Stripe extension. So if we go to woothemes.com, we can check out under extensions, go to payments and go to direct. And this for Stripe or any other payment processor that may not be coming with WooCommerce Core. So basically anything outside of PayPal. You can see we have Stripe here, Authorize.net, and a bunch of other payment processors. So if yours is listed there, you're going to want to purchase the respective plugin. It's important to note that the Stripe plugin is actually free, and you're going to get help creating an account if you've integrated with that WooCommerce services and Jetpack option that helped us out with our taxes and shipping. They're also going to help you get set up with Stripe. But even if you hadn't, this Stripe plugin is completely free. You just go through the checkout process and you'll be able to download it for free. And when you're configuring it, in this section here, it's going to ask you for some API keys, and those API keys you're going to get actually from Stripe when you create an account. But generally, these options or these extensions are very easy to set up. So just purchase or download the payment processing extension that you need, and then it'll be a new option here, and you just go through the configuration options. Now, because there's so many banks and different payment processors, we're not going to be able to cover each one in detail. But if you do have any problem setting up your specific payment processor extension, please go ahead and post on the forums and somebody will walk you through that process. As time goes on, I'll also try to add in those as optional tutorials, or at the very least, link the documentation on how to set those up. But there are a bunch of them, and I'll be doing the same thing with the shipping carriers and other stuff. But that's basically as easy as it is to set up payment. It's really not that difficult. As far as security, we're going to handle all that during the launch process, so we don't have to take care of that now. Just make sure that you've set up PayPal or Stripe or one of your other payment processors, and if you want to, some off-site payments. But the online payments are obviously better just for efficiency's sake, so we can make sure that we're getting paid before those products are being delivered. So that's everything to do with payment. Check out the next tutorials, which are going to cover setting up coupons and different promotions for our store.